Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into a serious and often overlooked topic, the dark realities of prostitution. It's a global industry shrouded in secrecy, hypocrisy, and often exploitation. We'll be peeling back the layers of this controversial issue, exploring the legal landscapes, the social stigmas, and the very real human stories that often get lost in the debate. Because whether we like it or not, prostitution exists. So buckle up as we take a trip around the world, shining a light on the top 10 countries where prostitution is legal and examining the lives of those working within this complex and often dangerous industry. Our first stop on this global tour of legalized prostitution takes us to Germany, a country often touted as having one of the most liberal and regulated sex industries in the world. Prostitution was legalized in Germany back in 2002, with the aim of bringing sex work out of the shadows and providing sex workers with basic rights and protections. Germany allows for brothels to operate openly, requires sex workers to register and undergo regular health checks, and even grants them access to social security benefits. But the reality on the ground paints a more complicated picture. Many sex workers, particularly migrant workers, find themselves vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The regulations can be difficult and expensive to navigate, pushing many into the unregulated market where they are far more susceptible to dangerous working conditions and unscrupulous clients. From Germany, we travel to the Netherlands, a country practically synonymous with legalized prostitution, thanks in no small part to Amsterdam's infamous red light district. Here, sex work has been legal and regulated since 2000, with the government arguing that decriminalization allows for greater control and protection of sex workers. Prostitutes in designated areas can operate openly, showcasing their services in window displays, much like any other commercial enterprise. They pay taxes and are theoretically entitled to the same labor rights. Critics argue that the Dutch model does little to address the demand for prostitution, which they argue fuels human trafficking. Furthermore, the concentration of prostitution in specific areas has led to concerns about increased crime rates and a decline in the quality of life for residents. Despite legalization, stigma continues to cast a shadow over the lives of sex workers, making it difficult for them to access essential services and build a life outside of the industry. Our next stop takes us to the Southern Hemisphere, specifically New Zealand, a country known for its stunning landscapes and surprisingly progressive social policies. In 2003, New Zealand took the bold step of fully decriminalizing sex work, removing it from the Crimes Act altogether. The idea was to treat sex work like any other form of labor, allowing sex workers to operate as independent contractors, set their own prices, and even form unions to advocate for their rights. Proponents point to the improved relationship between sex workers and law enforcement, the increased access to health and safety services, and the reduction in stigma as evidence of the model's success. However, critics argue that decriminalization has done little to address the underlying issues that lead people into sex work, such as poverty, lack of education, and limited employment opportunities. So, while New Zealand's model of decriminalization has undoubtedly improved the lives of some sex workers, it's clear that the debate over the best way to address the complexities of prostitution is far from over. From New Zealand, we hop over to its larger neighbour, Australia, a country known for its diverse landscapes and, unfortunately, when it comes to sex work, its equally diverse legal landscape. Unlike New Zealand's nationwide decriminalisation, Australia's approach to prostitution is a bit of a mixed bag, with laws varying significantly from state to state. In some states, like New South Wales, sex work is largely legal and regulated, with brothels operating openly, and sex workers required to obtain licenses and undergo regular health checks. However, in other states, like Queensland and Western Australia, sex work remains largely illegal, driving the industry underground and making sex workers more vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. This patchwork of laws creates confusion, inconsistency, and a lack of clarity for both sex workers and law enforcement. So, while some parts of Australia have made strides towards a more progressive approach to sex work, the country as a whole remains a patchwork of laws and loopholes, leaving many sex workers in a precarious and often dangerous position. Our journey now takes us to the heart of Europe, to Switzerland, a country known for its neutrality, its chocolate, and, perhaps surprisingly, its pragmatic approach to sex work. Prostitution has been legal in Switzerland since 1942, and the country has a long history of regulating the industry. In Switzerland, sex work is treated much like any other business. Sex workers can register with the authorities, pay taxes, and access social security benefits. However, beneath this seemingly straightforward legal framework lies a more complex reality. Some argue that the regulations can be burdensome and expensive, pushing some sex workers into the unregulated market. And while Switzerland has made efforts to combat human trafficking, the country's central location in Europe makes it a transit and destination country for sex trafficking victims. From the heart of Europe, we travel south to Greece, a country steeped in ancient history and mythology, but also grappling with modern challenges, including the complexities of sex work. Prostitution has been legal in Greece since 1999, but the industry operates under a strict regulatory framework. In Greece, sex workers are required to register with the authorities, undergo regular health checks, and carry special identification cards. However, despite these regulations, the reality for many sex workers in Greece is far from ideal. The global economic crisis hit Greece particularly hard, leading to increased poverty and unemployment, factors that often drive people into sex work. Furthermore, the stigma surrounding sex work in Greece remains strong, making it difficult for sex workers to access essential services, report abuse, or leave the industry. Our journey continues north to Austria, a country known for its stunning scenery, its musical heritage, and, perhaps ironically, its somewhat muted approach to discussing sex work. Prostitution has been legal in Austria since 1973, but the industry operates under a relatively low-profile regulatory framework. In Austria, sex workers are required to register with the authorities and undergo regular health checks. Brothels are legal and regulated, but advertising sex work is prohibited, which makes it difficult to run such an establishment in an above-board manner. The lack of open discussion and clear guidelines surrounding sex work can make it difficult for sex workers to assert their rights, access essential services, or report exploitation and abuse. So while Austria's approach to sex work may seem somewhat hands-off, the reality is that this lack of clarity and open dialogue can create a breeding ground for exploitation and abuse. Our journey now takes us to Turkey, a country straddling the divide between East and West with a complex history and a multifaceted relationship with sex work. Prostitution has been legal and regulated in Turkey since the Ottoman era, but the industry operates within a framework that often blurs the lines between tolerance and control. In Turkey, sex work is legal for those who register with the authorities, undergo regular health checks, and carry special identification cards. However, despite this legal framework, the reality for many sex workers in Turkey is far from straightforward. Conservative social norms and religious beliefs often clash with the legal reality of sex work, creating a climate of stigma and discrimination. Furthermore, Turkey's geographical location makes it a transit and destination country for sex trafficking, particularly from Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Our journey takes a somber turn as we travel to Bangladesh, a country grappling with widespread poverty and deeply ingrained patriarchal norms. The sex trade often exploits the most vulnerable members of society. Prostitution is technically legal, but the legal framework is riddled with contradictions and loopholes. Women, often from impoverished backgrounds, find themselves trapped in a cycle of exploitation and abuse. These areas are overcrowded, unsanitary, and rife with violence. The legal contradictions create a climate of fear and uncertainty. Patriarchal norms perpetuate the cycle of exploitation. Poverty, patriarchy, and social stigmas create a breeding ground for exploitation and abuse. Our final stop takes us to Mexico, a country of vibrant culture and complex history. Mexico's approach to prostitution varies significantly from state to state, creating a patchwork of tolerance and prohibition. In some parts, like Guanajuato, sex work is legal and regulated with designated zones and health services. However, in other areas, sex work remains illegal, exposing workers to significant risks. This highlights the urgent need for comprehensive legal frameworks prioritizing sex workers' safety. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. As we've seen, the issue of legal prostitution is anything but black and white. It's a complex tapestry woven from threads of economics, social justice, human rights, and deeply ingrained cultural norms. Let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to cover next.